I don't know if it's the absurd brand collaborations, the rapid increases of price and decrease in quality, the ridiculous PR stunts. I just feel like luxury doesn't mean anything anymore. It's no secret that luxury has been corporatized for like the past 40 years. Giant conglomerates like Kering or LVMH have been buying up companies left and right. They're all put under the same roof, a lot of them all made in the same factories. We all know that a big part of luxury is status perception and signaling, but it feels like that's all that's left. And anytime a movement tries to rebel against the big fashion machine, it gets co-opted, corporatized, and then spit back out. Take a look at the punk movement. It starts off as fringe, anti-corporate. The tastemakers start to pick up on it, and then all of a sudden it's on runways. The symbols meant to rebel against these corporate entities ended up representing them. This even kind of happened in reverse with the whole quiet luxury thing. I think as a response to people feeling like the wool had been pulled over their eyes with the Demna Balenciaga ridiculousness of the late 2010s, they started retreating towards the heritage brands like Loro Piana. But at the end of the day, he still ended up paying $400 for a hat. So what's the answer? How do we get luxury to mean something again? Now, obviously, things weren't always this way. Luxury used to mean something: craftsmanship, prestige, premium materials, and overall a much better, more comfortable user experience, whether it was a car, a stereo system, or your clothing. And all of those elements used to have a very direct relationship with the price. Back in the 1970s, for the modern equivalent of $1,200, you could go and get yourself a Rolex. Nowadays, you could pick up this nylon sweater from Acne Studios. Now, to understand where we are today, we have to take a little look back. The pre-industrial history of luxury was pretty straightforward. Luxury goods were reserved for emperors, royalty, monarchs, and their close circle. And they were often produced by a single or small team of artisans, and they would do a craft start to finish. They would focus on one object for months or years, sometimes with the help of an apprentice. The materials, the space, it was all provided by the monarchs. And they got to live a pretty cushy life because of that. And obviously, a big reason why they did this was not only because they wanted nice stuff, but because they wanted to signal to other leaders and their own people that they were the shit. And things got pretty competitive. People wanted to look after their artisans. They wanted them to stick with them. But then the Industrial Revolution happens. There's a ton of new money. People who came up with little to nothing then becoming very wealthy, and they had very big appetites for luxury. And the artisans, they started to go out on their own, building their own workshops, sourcing their own materials, training their own people. And here you have the establishment of luxury houses, Louis Vuitton, Cartier. Although a lot of craft was still very artisanal, luxury gets industrialized for the first time. And this only continues into the 20th century when you have the birth of the middle class after World War II. For the first time, you have attainable luxury. If the average Joe works hard enough, he can buy himself a Cadillac. You've got toasters and blenders, a fur hat for the wife. Not everybody had these things, but it was more attainable than ever to experience the sumptuousness of luxury goods. And with this level of scale, you also get brand awareness. People know the name Rolex because it's on James Bond. They recognize an Hermes bag because Jane Birkin's carrying one. This is where you truly have brand names that are synonymous with the qualities that they represent. It's where you get sayings like, blank is the Cadillac of blank.
Choice, Jack. This is the Cadillac of baloney.
And this is where things start to unravel. The oil crisis hits in the early 70s, and this screws the math up. You have stagflation, where the cost of the inputs of production costs more, but nobody's making any more money. All of a sudden, that big Cadillac is not only more expensive to fill up for the person driving it, but a lot more expensive for Cadillac to make. The radical response was Reaganomics. We know how that went. Instead of companies looking after their employees so they stick around and their customers so they keep buying, they're prioritizing the shareholder. Because at the end of the day, that's who employs the CEO, and the CEO employing everybody else. And that brand reputation that I was talking about before, well, CEOs figured out that they could rely on that. They could cut down on costs. They could make the product a little bit worse, a little bit cheaper day after day, and people would still buy their products because they trusted the name, at least long enough for the stock to keep going up and the CEO to get their bonus. But this pressure for infinite growth continues. The top 5%, 1%, they've been buying these nice goods that are made well, they last a long time. But what's a much bigger market? The top 50%. Now we get the introduction of diffusion lines, of licensing, of merchandising. All of a sudden, Dior or Coach can license their name to a sunglass company. That sunglass company can produce a bunch of sunglasses for cheap, send them a check, it's basically free money. Chanel makeup, Gucci fragrance. These are simple, easy solutions to capitalize on your brand. And of course, you have the diffusion line. You don't have to mess with the Giorgio Armani suits. You can still make those high quality, but get Armani Exchange in the mix and you can make a bunch of money off of $50 t-shirts. The pace at which people consume speeds up and speeds up. By the 90s and 2000s, luxury reaches this point where it's a behemoth. Whether or not you can afford them, everybody knows and recognizes the top brand names, the Pradas, the Guccis, the Louis Vuittons. And I don't want to make it sound like while the meaning of luxury was being eroded away, there was nobody that cared. There was a lot of people in the industry that tried to rebel against what was happening. But this circles back to my original point. You start with an authentic rebellion against this big corporate machine, usually rooted in some subculture. It starts to become popular because it's real, it's raw, it's authentic. People start to associate these visual cues cues with a message, and they want to be associated with it too. But as it grows and spreads, the visual cues of that movement start to matter more than the movement itself. We saw this happen with skate culture, with punk music, with streetwear, with graphic tees. They become cool, they get co-opted by a corporation and sold back to you. Almost anything that is fundamentally anti-fashion can still be corporatized to some effect. Vintage clothing, for example, we see distressing and fading being worked into new products so that people can have that vintage aesthetic without actually buying into the vintage movement and everything that comes with that. Even the rise of more artisanal brands like Evan Kenori, like Cardic Research, that puts emphasis on handcraft, on natural materials, it still gets scaled up to this size for profit. The problem is a very human one at that. It's that we signal our virtues so heavily through visual cues. You know that the jacket I'm wearing is vintage because it's patchworked, it's faded, it's got some holes in it, but Zara has all the technology to completely recreate this and sell it on the shelves, and they probably do. It's too easy for me to virtue signal by wearing a jacket like this because we're so used to taking things at face value. The answer is that we have to rebel against this current system by operating outside of it. We can't keep relying on simply the way that things look. We have to change the way that we purchase and interact with clothing at the base. If you have the means and you want to own something nice, you have to do the due diligence. And one of the best ways to do that is to support someone who is actually involved in the making and designing of the item. Someone within your own community that makes clothing start to finish. Someone you discover online or abroad that weaves their own textiles. A woodworker crafting furniture start to finish. These are products that match and oftentimes undercut what is currently sold to us as luxury, but there is a direct financial relationship between the money that you spend and the livelihood of the individual creating it, along with the finished quality of the product and the materials that are used. Now, before you tell me that this is too far gone, nobody's actually going to adopt these principles into the way that they consume, I want to remind you that this is not the first time that this has been done, and why I want to tell you a little bit about the arts and crafts movement of the 19th century. If you look back at the industrialization I was talking about before, look at a place like Britain in the mid to late 1800s. Yes, you're seeing large increases of wealth and an increase in the living standard for a lot of people, but the manufacturing hubs, the coal mining towns were practically hell. Terrible air quality, terrible living and working conditions. And that man who would have been the skilled village blacksmith who would have made tools start to finish is now just doing one singular part of the production process. The woman who was spinning and weaving beautiful textiles now just manning a spinning jenny. Craftspeople had been alienated from their craft. The response to this social change was the arts and crafts movement. It was a design movement that started in England and then quickly moved across North America, the rest of Europe. And it was built on core fundamentals that were focused on the process, not just aesthetics. They believed that machines could be useful tools, but shouldn't take over entire parts of the production process. That craftspeople had the right, the say, and the imperative to be involved in the entire process of making something. They believed in honesty of materials, using things that were beautiful and natural, not hiding the work of the maker, seeing the visual imperfections in a woven fabric or the joinery on a piece of furniture, ditching the excessive ornamentation of the era for a more functional beauty. This movement didn't happen overnight. It was championed by influential politicians and artisans alike, Carlyle, Ruskin, William Morris. They built an infrastructure to support people's crafts. There were guilds, co-ops, organizations, commercial networks for craftspeople so that they could not only get all the tools and materials that they needed, but sell products to the right buyer who would appreciate their work. These craftspeople were able to support themselves outside of this industrial system, and it led to some incredible, beautiful objects and architecture that we can still appreciate to this day. Yes, there was a cohesive aesthetic language to the arts and crafts movement, which you can recognize, but that was matched by process-based fundamentals that were constantly supported and galvanized. And that's what we need to rebuild. Small makers with a direct relationship to their customers, apprenticeship, the willingness to pass down craft, and most importantly, a consumer base that is educated on the fact that their dollars can directly support someone's livelihood, that independent, skilled artisans across every craft, from furniture making to textiles to fragrance, they deserve your hard-earned dollar a lot more than LVMH does. Not buying into a status signal, but paying for the time and the skill of someone worthy. It's sad that we've gotten to this point where capitalism and craft are almost synonymous. What the arts and crafts movement did was it returned dignity to work. It reminded us that there is a nobility in producing something beautiful, that we humans are creative individuals, and that making something can be incredibly fulfilling and satisfying, with a very positive impact on a smaller scale within a community. So for the people that do have the budget to buy nice things, the next time you're about to go out and purchase something, ask yourself what you're really paying for. If you can afford to support a small maker, do it. And if you're having a hard time finding those names, I've got a bunch of resources. I'll link them down below. And if you can't afford to support small creators because it is expensive, think about and consider the philosophy behind it. Making things yourself, repairing what you have, learning how your stuff is made, because by appreciating craft and respecting the creativity and the skill that we humans possess is, in my opinion, a very humane thing. You don't have to do it to save the world, because at the end of the day, none of us sole individuals can topple this corporation, but do it for yourself. Do it for your own selfish reasons. That's okay. It's something I'm trying to do myself, and I'm definitely not perfect at it. And if you're interested in learning more about these small creators, I've been working on a show for the past couple months. It's gonna be coming out soon. And we're gonna be looking at the lives and the works of some of these individuals that I'm speaking about. So stay tuned for that. Please let me know your thoughts on everything that we talked about today, and let me know what else you would maybe want to hear about. Thanks for watching. And like and subscribe.